समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
You've seen the headlines already that the Defense Acquisition Committee, apex body under Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, has cleared. It has cleared what is called as acceptance of necessity for 114 Rafales. These 114 Rafales include 88 single-seat Rafale fighters and 26 two-seat trainers. Now that's a high number of trainers and we'll have to figure out why so many trainers, but yes, 88 single-seat aircraft, 26 two-seat aircraft, 114 Rafale aircraft. What will now happen is the Air Force will now start looking and assessing, and price negotiations will start after a request for proposal is issued to Dassault, because this clearance by the DAC is specific to Dassault and Rafale. It doesn't say 114 aircraft in this category. This is specific to the aircraft, which tells us that a lot of the groundwork has already been done between the two countries. It's a government-to-government purchase. Now, after this, a request for proposal will be issued when Dassault will put up a techno-commercial proposal to be evaluated, which will be done by the Indian side, and then a price negotiation committee will be set up. A commercial negotiation committee will be set up, CNC. They will then figure out the final price of the aircraft, of the systems that come with it, and also of the weapons that are bought, including your attrition reserve, war wastage reserve, etc., etc. If the price is not within the range that DAC has already assessed, then it will come back to DAC. Otherwise, it will go to Cabinet Committee on Security, which will then clear the purchase. I suspect this will move very fast, and there is a reason why this will move very fast. There is also a reason why this is almost a decade, if not a decade and a half delayed in decision making. I will take you through that as we go along. This, however, is the news now. You've seen the headlines. In fact, while the Rafale took away all the headlines, there is a lot that happened in this DAC meeting. There was also clearance for what looks like almost a $2.5 to $3 billion worth of purchase of 6 more P-8I anti-submarine warfare aircraft for the Navy. Anti-submarine warfare, ISR, which is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance platforms for the Navy, to add to the 12 that it already has. Indian Navy loves the P-8I, and Indian Air Force and the Army also love the P-8I because it's also been used. You've also seen it flying along the Ladakh border in more difficult times. It's a very potent platform. 6 more are coming in. This is a decision that had been taken in 2019. The acceptance of necessity had taken place. The Americans took 2 years approving this sale, and then one thing or the other led to delays. It is only now that once again government has decided that they are going to buy this. This is a straightforward off-the-shelf sale. No transfer of technology, no co-production, no offsets, nothing. Most of the American equipment in what is called as FMS or foreign military sales has come in like that. And that's how the 6 aircraft will come in. There is also clearance for a bunch of mines, anti-tank mines for the army, for the upgrade of a very large number of T-72 tanks, some armored recovery vehicles, and a very interesting new equipment, that is AS-HAPS. AS is Airship High Altitude Pseudo Satellite. That is something we'll talk about for just a couple of minutes. Maybe this is a system that deserves a separate Cut the Clutter or a defense scope by Snesh Alex Philip. We'll do that later, but I will mention that in some detail. That also is worth 15,000 crores. 15,000 crores have been allocated to that program as well. That's how the size of clearances for AON, acceptance of necessity, at this Defence Acquisition Committee DAC meeting is about 3.5 lakh crores. Some headlines would have said, might have made it sound like the Rafales are 3.5 lakh crores worth. No, Rafales are about 2.5 lakh crores worth with their missiles and other stuff. And then you have all of these other things. This is one of the biggest clearances in a one-time meeting of the DAC. This tells you the post-op Sindoor sense of urgency that Modi government has. In fact, in the cleaning up process, they've realized that AONs have been sitting there for years, in some cases for more than a decade. And what the Modi government is now doing is going over all of those and figuring out which are the ones now relevant, and those that are not relevant would then be junked, because our arms acquisition process has been so cluttered over time. Of these aircraft, of these Rafales, 90 will be on Make in India basis, ultimately reaching about 50 to 60% of indigenization. Now, this is something, indigenization and Make in India is a very Indian phenomenon. We rarely make everything in India, but we keep on saying indigenize. In fact, Steve Cohen had once raised a question, I think he wrote a paper also, that what is this Indian obsession with indigenization when they can't Indianize very much, or they don't look at Indianizing very much. Nevertheless, this is a foreign system, it's an imported system. To whatever extent you indigenize it, those elements in the aircraft will be produced in India. They will also create jobs in India. They will also create expertise in India. As this techno-commercial proposal comes from Dassault, chances are they would have already been talking to a partner. They refused to partner with HAL the last time the proposal had come up, because they said they will not certify what is produced by HAL. They also said that the manpower cost that HAL was charging them, that the manpower cost that HAL were charging them for doing this job was 2.57 times more than what they would have reckoned in their pricing or their costing. So they would have found a partner. Maybe it's the Tatas. Maybe they'll start working at DRAL, or what is called as Dassault Reliance Aerospace Limited. That is the plant near Nagpur that they had set up in partnership with Anil Ambani or RADAG. Anil Ambani's group became a minority holder there some time back, and chances are that they will sell their minority shareholding now to another Indian industrial major or manufacturing major. It can be Tatas, it can be Mahindras, it can be anybody. But this will be done in partnership with an Indian private sector company. So this will also mark India's great leap forward in building a genuine military industrial complex. That's why this deal is particularly exciting. Also, with this deal will come large numbers of missiles that the Rafale uses, particularly in this case, the Scalp missile. Scalp missile was used during Op Sindoor. It's also called Storm Shadow. It's also being used by the Ukrainians. When these aircraft come in, look at the number of Rafales Indian Air Force will have. Indian Air Force already bought 36. Then 26 are on order for the Navy. They will start coming in latest by 2028. Maybe one odd will come in 2027 itself. Then 114 in this order. This makes 176 aircraft. By the time these aircraft come in, the last of these come in, chances are that your MiG-29s today, I will give you some squadron numbers, MiG-29s, Jaguars, probably also Mirage 2000s would have all retired, would have all become outdated and retired. And those squadrons will then be filled by Rafale. These new Rafale purchases will be about 7 squadrons. 2 squadrons already exist. This will become 9 squadrons of Rafale. And until the Mirage 2000s last, maybe with further upgrades, the Mirage system now will become the new MiG in the Indian Air Force. Because for a very long time, since the mid-60s, the MiG variants formed the bulwark of Indian Air Force. Now it's going to be Dassault aircraft, Rafale, and for quite some time, Mirage 2000s as well. The Air Force that will emerge from this will basically be Dassault aircraft, mainly Rafale, And then Sukhoi 30 MKI, which will then be upgraded in the course of time. Will get the Super Sukhoi, they will get a better radar, they will get Astra 2, and they will also get better new generation BrahMos missiles as well, because Sukhoi 30 has told you that if you fit, it's a large enough, powerful enough platform to carry really big long-range missiles like BrahMos. To that extent, it can stay out of the range of anything that the enemy will fire at it, and from there take out almost any target, at least in Pakistan. So you can see Sukhoi is being upgraded in the course of time and continuing in service for a very long time. So Sukhoi is on the one hand, and the Rafale filling in the multi-role gap, because it can attack, it can defend, it can fight in the air at a very long range. It is genuinely an aircraft that can be used for air superiority as well as precision, long distance, standoff, air to ground firing of guided munitions. Now, why did I say it is so urgent that it's almost 10 to 15 years too late that we are ordering these Rafales? Because it will still take some time. It's not as if Macron will come here and an agreement will be signed. If that happens, it would mean that negotiations, etc., have already taken place. So it's not impossible, but most unlikely. Maybe some kind of a letter of intent might be signed. It will still take time for the French to build this. And in the process, where do you think will the Indian Air Force be headed? Indian Air Force now, its sanctioned strength is 42 squadrons, not for about 27, 28 years or maybe 30 years as it had 42 squadrons. Its squadron strength has been depleting because old aircraft, a lot of those were MiG-21s, they've been going out of service. At this point, Indian Air Force is down to 29 squadrons. It barely matches PAF, which is about 25 squadrons. Of course, among 25 squadrons that PAF has, they also have some really obsolete aircraft. They have their F-7s, which is like their equivalent of the MiG-21, and they have Mirage variants, Mirage 3 and Mirage 5, which are quite outdated, more than 50 years old, but they've been adding more of the newer aircraft, that is J-10s, JF-17s, which they're co-producing with the Chinese, and also the other aircraft they are going to acquire from the Chinese, because PAF is now becoming mostly a Chinese aircraft-dominated air force. They have their legacy F-16s though. Indian Air Force today has 29 squadrons. How do these squadrons break up? I'm not telling you anything that you cannot get on Google. I'm only telling you how many squadrons of which type of aircraft. So if you see Sukhoi 30 MKI, that is the largest number in the inventory of the Indian Air Force, 272. That is squadron number 2, 4, 8, 15, 20, 24, 30, 36, 102, 102, by the way, used to be the Trisonics earlier. They had the MiG-25s, which could fly 3 times the speed of sound at very high altitudes. They were used only exclusively in photo reconnaissance role. They used to be based at Bareilly. So 102, 106, Squadron 220, 226, 222, which makes for 13 squadrons. So 13 Sukhoi squadrons. Next to that, we have Jaguar squadrons. So Jaguars are very old. They started coming in, say, around 1978. They were ordered in 1977-78. So they are also about 50 years old, although they've been upgraded over time, but they are quite old now. Jaguars have 6 squadrons in the Indian Air Force. Most of these will retire. I think all of these will retire by 2030 when the first Rafale start coming in. Mirage 2000, there are 3 squadrons. MiG-29, 3 squadrons. Tejas right now is 2 squadrons. This is Tejas Mark 1. Tejas Mark 1A squadrons will come up now. I hope that this year, if HAL is able to sort out everything and GE keeps on sending engines as they promised, by the end of this year, India may get at least 1 full squadron of Tejas Mark 1A. That will be an additional squadron. So some of the number-plated squadrons then will be filled up. And when you see the squadron numbers of Indian Air Force, go to any database, you will find many missing squadron numbers. Those are squadrons which have been number-plated, which means the squadron in name lives on At some point when aircraft will become available, those squadrons will be filled up. Once again, if the delivery of these Rafales begins by 2030, by 2030-31, 12 of the current squadrons will go, which means all of the Jaguar squadrons will go. Chances are most of the Mirage squadrons, or at least they will become under strength by then, because some aircraft will be used as Christmas trees, as they are called, to take out parts and fit into other aircraft to make them serviceable. MiG-29s will also retire. How will Indian Air Force then fill up this space? That's why it's important that the Rafales come early and the Tejas, first of all, Tejas Mark 1A deliveries take place on time, and then Mark 2 comes on stream at least at a time when it's been promised, which means from 2028 onwards. If that happens, then you might get 5 or 6 squadrons of Mark 1A and maybe 1 or 2 more of Mark 2. That will be some kind of a stopgap until the Rafales start coming in larger numbers. However, by that time, 26 naval Rafales will also become available. It will also give both Indian Air Force and Navy the time then to train more pilots. That might in fact be the reason why a larger number of trainers is being ordered with these Rafales. 4 2-seat trainers per squadron. That sounds high, unless of course the Indian Air Force wants to use these trainers with two cockpits in a different kind of a role. I shall not speculate on that, except to say that in the Sukhoi, for example, Sukhoi 30 MKI, you see 2 cockpits. One is the pilot, the other is the weapons officer, because these are really potent platforms that carry very long range weapons, and the workload on a solitary pilot can be too much with all those weapons loaded onto the aircraft. They need to aim them correctly, they need to manage the environment around you, and also to deal with the threats that will keep on emerging. However, even if all of this happens till around 2033-34, the Indian Air Force will still be way short of what is called as its sanctioned strength. And now people are saying, oh, by 2047, you should be 55 squadrons because the Chinese threat would rise. You know, the best is not the enemy of good. So let's go ahead with the good that we can do for ourselves right now. The perfect or the best will happen in the course of time. There will be a gap. For example, even if the AMCA program progresses as envisaged, the first Indian-made AMCA will come into service only around 2035. That is, providing there are no delays, and frankly, there is no major fighter aircraft system in the entire world, in the US, France, Europe. I don't know so much about China, but they've also taken forever reverse engineering many of these Russian engines. There might be a delay. It's not impossible. In fact, it's more likely than not, which means for a period, Indian Air Force will be lacking a 5th generation fighter aircraft or equivalent, because the Pakistanis will get those from the Chinese. Remember, you are not fighting a 2-front war in 2 separate fronts. You are fighting a 2-front war mostly on one front, which is the Pakistani front, because the Chinese will keep on fighting you through Pakistan. That's why in the early 30s, there will still be a gap, and I will not be surprised. And I read a lot that's coming out in the defense press, in the military press, and you can also see it in some of the writings of Snehesh Alex Philip, our defense editor, that India may end up acquiring at least a couple of 5th generation aircraft as a stopgap in this period until AMCA comes along. Government of India right now is in a buying mood. That's why we've seen the capital budget for the armed forces go up this year, and that's also the reason why this year, the year that will conclude on 31st March, is the first in more than a decade, in fact in about a decade and a half, where revised estimates of defense budget will be higher than budget estimates. What that means is we will spend more for the first time in many years than was budgeted. Usually revised estimates are lower because we are not able to spend what was already budgeted, even what was already budgeted. That era is now over. In this situation, India is already looking for a medium transport aircraft because that's a large order. India needs a lot of haulage for its defense logistics. It has to move armed forces quickly from one place to the other. It has to move equipment. Remember when India decided to match the Chinese in Ladakh, tanks were flown in C-17 transport aircraft. Each one took one tank. That's how the strength of Indian armor was built up. To drive them through the Himalayan passes and altitudes would have taken too long. That was done also, but this heavy transport haulage was needed. That is a critical shortage right now in the medium tonnage category. There are some C-130s, there are just a few IL-76s, but more is needed. And that's why India is on the lookout for about 50 to 60 medium transport aircraft, and that's where the C-130, because the requirement there is from 19 tons to 27 tons payload. And that's where Lockheed Martin for C-130, which we already have, Airbus 400, which is actually on the higher side of tonnage, and Embraer are all in the race. And remember, Embraer has just signed a joint venture with Adani to manufacture transport aircraft in India. The defense logistics or supplies or haulage aircraft is not very different from the transport aircraft. And remember, when you make an aircraft type in transport, you can customize it for passengers, for cargo, and or for military use. I told you about that other fascinating piece of equipment for which acceptance of necessity has been given. That is AS-HAPS, AS-HAPS. AS is airships based. HAPS is high altitude pseudo satellites. As the name indicates, airships means these are like blimps or airships which can go high, but this AON is for both. It's for airships, which are like kind of version of balloons, but not quite balloons, but they float up at high altitude, but also fixed wing version of HAPS. They are called high altitude pseudo satellite because they are not quite satellites, because satellites go 200 kilometers out in space. These are aviation assets that go up to 60, 65,000, 70,000, like 20 kilometers plus altitude, where it's very difficult to reach through normal missiles, and they can be sitting way back in your airspace and then through their cameras and sensors looking at a large amount of area on the other side, on the adversary's side. That is being developed. One version is being developed by National Aerospace Lab or NAL. Other versions are being developed by a bunch of private entrepreneurs in India. I don't know if you remember seeing it, but if you've lived in Punjab for about 20 years, you might have seen that couple of these big balloon kind of things were put up in some parts, not close to the border, quite far also in Rajasthan. These were called blimps. These blimps could look far into the Pakistani airspace. In the course of time, these became run down and they are no longer available now. In this case, however, these HAPS system will not be stationary. They will be flying and they will be solar powered. And because they'll be solar powered, they'll be able to fly for a very long time, 90 hours, 100 hours like that. To that extent, they will become a substitute for satellites. They will be different from satellites to the extent that unlike satellites, you can direct them here and there, they are at your beck and call. Satellites make their passes. You can also decide when the next pass will be, where the next pass will be, but these ones you can control, their movement you can control with just a mouse. You can figure out what you want to see, you can decide what you want to see and where, and then use these systems. These are early days for this. What the government has said, that we are open, we know that we need something like this, and we are open to spending up to 15,000 crores on this. At this point, instead of holding forth in more detail about AS-HAPS, which maybe at some point of time either I will explain to you or Snehesh will explain to you, I will circle back to the Rafale question, because therein lies the tragedy of Indian defense acquisitions. It is in 99-2000 that the Indian Air Force realized that they really liked the Mirage 2000, because Mirage 2000 gave them excellent results in Kargil. It was the only aircraft on which they could put these laser guided bombs that scored direct hits on many Pakistani installations and many Pakistani concentrations there. They wanted more of the Mirages. The French came forward also, and the French said that they were now moving on to Rafale. So they were willing to transfer their entire assembly line of Mirage 2005, the latest version, with full technology transfer, etc., etc. Vajpayee government was very keen. Indian Air Force was very, very keen. And then you know what happened? Then the Tehelka scam happened. The Tehelka scam scared everybody. It scared everybody. So Vajpayee government said, no, we are not doing this. This looks like a single vendor situation. So let's float a tender and let's have a competition. Let everyone come and bid. That tragic story, Snesh Alex Phillips told us earlier. I will share that with you. You can also see it on your screens. You can also see the graphic on your screen giving you the journey, the 25-year journey that brought us to Rafale now. Now, after Vajpayee government decided, chastened by Tehelka, that they will have a competition, let others come in, they floated what was called as a Medium Multi-Role Combat Aircraft or MMRCA tender. In 2004, it took 4 years. 2004, a request for information was issued. So various manufacturers sent their details. 2007, request for proposals was sent for 126 aircraft and options to buy 74 more. Who were the competitors? Rafale, the French, Eurofighter, Typhoon, F-16 and FA-18 Super Hornet, both American, MiG-35 from Russia and Gripen from Sweden. All of these competed, after which two were shortlisted, that is Rafale and Typhoon. And then the Indian Air Force said that we will choose Rafale in 2012 because one, they were the cheapest bidder, and also Typhoon was more customized for use from carriers. This is something that Manohar Parrikar inherited. In 2015, he pretty much buried this for two reasons. One, he said that A.K. Antony had written something on the file that toxified the entire project. A.K. Antony said, you negotiate with Dassault in this case and come back to me again with proof that this is the lowest price. Now you are negotiating with the lowest bidder. And then you have to come back still. That's what Parrikar said. And you have to still come back still and prove that it's the lower price, which means you are negotiating with the lowest bidder and then still keeping the deal open. That is not what the rules by Central Vigilance Commission permit. That's the reason he buried that MMRCA tender. That project then closed. The other reason was that Parrikar really believed that India can build enough Tejases and the newer iterations of Tejases fast enough. So maybe it will not be necessary to buy so many aircraft in that category, in MMRCA category. That unfortunately did not work out in the course of time, and that's how later Modi government, because they knew the shortfalls, they basically carried out an emergency purchase of 36 Rafale aircraft. My complaint with this is that, okay, there was talk of a scandal, there were allegations, but that was all over. And 2019 election, when Modi government came back to power with a larger majority, that was like a Ganga Snan for the Rafale scam. It was at that point when they should have ordered more Rafales. If they had done so, by this time we might have been flying 5 or 6 squadrons instead of the 2 that we have. This project came back to life but under a new name. Now it was to be called Multi-Role Fighter Aircraft. Initially, the choice was a single-engine aircraft. If it was to be a single-engine aircraft, then F-16 American and Gripen were the two choices. Nirmala Sitharaman as Defense Minister then said, look, don't confine yourself to single engine. Also, the Air Force likes 2 engines, so let's make it open to both single engine aircraft and double engine aircraft. And that's when this new Rafale saga began. This was now called the MRFA contract, Multi-Role Fighter Aircraft Project. What was MMRCA acquired a new name. The search, however, was for a similar aircraft. It has now ended with Rafale. Hopefully, I'm presuming that the price negotiations will go well, an order will be placed, an advance paid, and production will start soon.